Welcome to the Disney Parks Podcast, your Disney infotainment podcast. Keep your hands, arms, feet, and legs inside the podcast at all times and get ready for the Disney Parks Podcast.
Hey, welcome. We have an awesome show. We have a great author with us, Matt Mason. He's a lifelong Disney fan ever since his first visit at the age of 4. That's a long time. Matt served as Nebraska State Poet from 2019 to 2024, has taken his love of poetry all around the world, leading workshops for the U.S. State Department. Love to hear about that. His work has appeared in the New York Times. He's a proud Pushcart Prize recipient. Matt is also the author of the book that we're going to talk about, Corner of Fantasy in Main Street, Disneyland, Midlife and Churros. So welcome to the show, Matt.
Hey, thanks for having me, Tony. It's a pleasure.
Yeah. So we like to ask everybody, how did your journey with Disney begin? How did it all start for you? Apparently at age 4.
For me, yeah, that's the first trip was a family trip to California and visited Disneyland with my parents, stayed in the Disneyland hotel. And, it was fantastic. So went a few times as a youth and a few times different parts of my life. And it really, I always knew I liked it, but it really clicked about 7 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you think, drew you in? Like, why did you keep going back? I mean, for me, I know why we kept going back. It was my father. But for you, why do you think you kept going back?
For me, it's family. It's a great place, family or not. But it's one of the first places I ever remember being with my parents. And that and another trip there. And then going there when I was in college, I was at Santa Clara, about 5 hours north, and made a couple trips down. And just all these great parts of my life were in Disneyland.
Yeah, yeah. Have you ever made the trek to the other side, to the Disney World?
I did my first Disney World trip this past December. I have some old friends from high school who live in Florida and are annual pass holders, so they were my tour guides, and I had a blast.
Yeah. It's different. It's not the same. It's weird.
No.
Yeah, I've been to Disneyland, and it's weird for me to say this, but I prefer Disneyland because of its close proximity, less walking around. I mean, Disney World can exhaust any human very easily.
Yeah.
And Disneyland, I don't feel like at the end of the day, like I need a masseuse to come to my room and put me back together again. So,
it can. I mean, it's nice at Disneyland, the two parks, you can just pop back and forth on foot.
Yeah.
And same, I've also been to Disneyland Paris, and that's a similar close parks structure. But it's kind of, I've been to Disneyland, I don't know, 20 or more times. And so Disney World and Disneyland Paris, walking through, it feels like I'm in a dream. It's like all the things are there, but they're in the wrong place.
Adventureland should be this way, but it's not.
Yeah, it's like, there's Skull Rock, which I was there when I was 4, but has disappeared. But it's in Disneyland.
Yeah, weird. So what inspired you then to write the book, At the Corner of Fantasy and Maine?
It was a weird thing. I was turned 49 years old and found myself just thinking about Disneyland more than normal. And so I'm subscribing to podcasts, watching the YouTube video of the 1955 opening Disneyland show. I'm reading books and doing all this research and stuff. And at some point, my wife, who's also a writer, she sees this going on and she asks, "So what are you writing?" And I'm saying, "I'm not writing anything. This is just, I don't know what's going on. This is terrible." It felt like a bad sitcom version of a midlife crisis episode.
Right.
And she's just, you're a writer. you're doing research, write.
Yeah.
So, started writing poem. First it was simple, a poem about Space Mountain or this or that. Then it started going back to memories. And then it just kind of expanded from there. Really became a book about Disneyland, but also growing older and family and things like that.
Yeah. So I'm assuming like being Nebraska State Poet had a large influence on this book.
It did. I think with a book like this, it's tough. You need a little bit of credibility to get it published because a lot of poetry publishers are going to look at, oh, you've got a book of poems about Disneyland. Sure, we'll publish that. No, they won't. But fortunately, the Old Mill Press, who's mainly a Disney history publisher who does beautiful books, but they also have a couple poetry titles. So, I sent sent a query to them, and they were interested in seeing more, and they ended up really liking it. And they've been wonderful to work with.
Yeah. What does like Disneyland symbolize, for you, and just beyond the theme park, and as a a narrative in the book?
For me, it was writing this book that I figured it out, and I didn't know when I started, is that Disneyland is kind of a hub for all these major times in my life. It's one of the first places I remember seeing my parents. It's a place I went when I was in college. Took my whole family there later. All these different parts of my life intersect in Disneyland. And it's kind of, it's a great place anyway, but it's magical in those terms too.
Yeah. And what's the, significance of churros also?
Simply that they are fantastic and delicious.
It's just a good treat to walk around with.
Yes. And it's a fun word to say. Churro. It's wonderful.
Yeah. I'm sure a lot of things can rhyme with churro too.
Suppose so. Yeah. But what can you do?
Yeah. As you're going through the process, I am not a poet. I'm not going to confess to even be anything near that. But is there a process you go through? Were there any surprises in like, oh, I'm going to write something about Space Mountain because I have memories of that attraction. What's that process like? How do you go about doing that to put it into
for me
form?
Yeah, for me, it's starting with an image or an idea, and just I start writing and see what happens. And a lot of my poems end up being practice. They don't turn into anything that I think I can use, but a lot of them, as I'm writing, something happens and I surprise myself. I learn something. Like I said, just writing this book, I just knew I had this obsession overcoming me, and I didn't know why or what the real story was. But by writing these poems, I slowly figured it out.
As like I said, a person that doesn't read a lot of poems, what is a poem? Does it have to have a certain kind of structure? I know there's rhyming poems. I know there's lyrics. What makes a good poem?
What
That's
makes a
probably
good
a tough
poem
question,
is
but
no, not at all. Actually, I think what makes a good poem is it makes you feel something. It makes you feel like you're not reading about a story. It's like you're part of the story, standing next to the storyteller. I think we've lost our way a little bit with poetry over the last 100 or so years, and that poetry has gotten to be this complicated, like high art. And all I see poems as is a different way of telling stories. And so I want somebody to understand the story in it and also feel a little bit of the story. And it's just fun to play with that way.
Yeah. Were there any like specific characters or Disney history that or referenced or included or connected with in the poems?
A whole lot. That the live broadcast of the 1955
I love that.
park opening. Oh my gosh, it was fun. Only one poem ended up from that in the book, but I wrote a bunch because that was just such a trip to watch. And also visiting the Walt Disney Hometown Museum down in Marceline, Missouri. I got a few poems from that, and the Walt Disney Family Museum in San Francisco and the Presidio.
Wow.
So a lot of different things ended up being poems. A lot of them were just rides, or a lot of them were just looking at the park. I spent a lot of time while writing the book in Disneyland. In fact, I took a 2-week writer's retreat where I had an annual pass, a lot of Southwest miles, and a Priceline hotel, and spent 2 weeks where that was where I worked. And you know, that a little table outside of Jolly Holiday was my workspace, and I loved it.
Yeah,
it's a great job when you take a break, you can ride Space Mountain and eat a churro. So
yeah.
I would like more jobs like that.
Yeah, there's a woman at the Hometown Museum, Kate. She is the I think director of that museum.
Kay, I think.
Yeah. Did you have a chance to talk to her? Did she tell you her story?
The first time I went, Kay was there, and we talked a bit, and actually they had me read one of the poems from the book at their fall event a couple years ago. So I got to, interact with everybody, and there's such wonderful folks down there.
Yeah.
Well worth a trip to Marceline for anybody who hasn't been.
Yeah, we had her on the show, and we asked her, like, how did your journey with Disney begin? She goes, well, Walt and Roy stayed at our house. And we were like, what? wait, hold on. Can you rewind that one more time? They did what?
Yeah.
Well, there was no air conditioning in Marceline, so they stayed at our house while they were in town. And then we stayed at their apartment at Disneyland. We're like, all right, well, we're done now.
No big deal.
Yeah, no big deal. We'll stay at my house. Okay. I still haven't been there. I have to go and see this woman in person because I'm sure she left a lot of stories off the table, that she didn't want to tell us.
Yeah. It just seems like she's got way too many. It's amazing.
Yeah. Very interesting woman.
And the museum did a good job with the museum. Got help from Walt's youngest sister, and it's a cool spot. And I love that it's in the Midwest. I'm in Omaha, so there's not much Disney I can get to within 4 hours, but that I can.
Yeah. I mean, I'd love to go to Chicago, see the family home there, go to Marceline, go to the family museum, and then down to Disney. That's my ultimate trip there. Kind of get that.
And they're renewing his first studio in Kansas City right now.
Oh, fantastic! A group
called Thank You Walt Disney. So.
Yeah, I thought I read that. Yep. Do you have a favorite attraction that you wrote a poem about? Maybe you want to share that with us?
Yeah. Well, my favorite of the attractions is Space Mountain. For whatever reason, I'm always drawn to that one. And I think this is probably one of the first poems I wrote for the book.
Cool.
Yeah. So just a second. Let me find the page.
I think Space Mountain
and go to that.
A little nostalgia for all of us because it seems like the first thrill ride we kind of go on as kids.
That might be, yeah. Because it was fun when I went. It was one of my daughter's her first roller coaster. The other, I've got 2 daughters. The other one's first roller coaster was Matterhorn. So they've done well.
Yeah.
But here's a poem called Space Mountain. Space Mountain gets tough to get to in the belly of the day. But when the sun goes snuff and the parade lights up, you sprint the whole line, rockets waiting for you like a valet roller coaster, again and again. Scream through the stars, bolt out the exit, shoot back through the queue, arms half raised, the galaxy's ecstatic exhalation against your face.
Perfect.
Thank you. Yeah, just trying to get the experience of riding that ride, and that's based on a trip when I was, I don't know, in my early 20s, and went with some friends, and we just had that experience of Space Mountain being packed all day, and then during the parades, we could just run back and forth through the lines and ride it over and over.
Yeah,
that was the best.
We don't want to tell people those secrets.
True. Well, that was a secret that worked in the 90s, and I don't think it's as good these days.
Yeah. So, writing the book, have you been to Disneyland recently, and does that like change your experience and how you see things now and how you view things?
It's all a similar experience, I suppose. I mean, I've been there a few times since publishing the book.
Yeah.
And I'll go back and I'll have new poem ideas that, it's too late for this book, but maybe a future book.
Right.
But mostly, having spent so much time there writing the book, it feels even more like home. It's such a familiar spot. I know the various pathways, and so it's fun when something changes too, though. I love getting a little bit lost or riding a new attraction or something like that. So it's fun, but it's my home, sort of second home.
Yeah, it's tough because Disneyland doesn't get the transformations that Disney World does. I mean, like Epcot went through this whole huge transformation since COVID. It took like 4 years to change the entire front of the park, and now our Magic Kingdom, we're getting a whole Villains Land, and our Tom Sawyer Island's disappearing, for cars. So we seem to see more transformation here because they have the space to rip things out and put things in. But Disneyland seems to be a little. I mean, you guys are getting some new Marvel stuff and that Avatar, which will change the footprint of the park. So
it's mostly. I mean, really, it's mostly California Adventure. I guess the Galaxy's Edge changed things, but kind of got tacked onto the outside of it in a way. So it's still, I mean, that's one of the magical things, I think, for me and writing this book is examining this place that is largely the same as it was in 1973, the first time I went. A few attractions have changed, things have been reorganized a little bit, but it's still, in the same footprint and much of the same kind of stuff.
Yeah. Well, I know they have their Disneyland Forward where they're trying to beg the city of Anaheim for some help to make things different. So hopefully with some tax money and other things, but hopefully something will happen. But what advice would you give?
I hope so.
Yeah, what advice would you give somebody, maybe a young writer that has a love or a passion for something that, wants to turn their writings into, a great book like this? What would you tell them?
It's really just write it. I think there were a lot of things holding me back from writing this book even.
Yeah.
I was thinking so much about Disneyland and doing all this research, but not writing because I just thought it was, silly or strange or and once I started writing, I realized, this is no throwaway project. This is meaningful. This is about a place, yes, and it's also about growing older. It's about family. It's about all these different things. But we hold ourselves back. I think especially, with poets or storytellers, we're our own worst critics rather than just writing and dealing with what happens later. Get the stuff out of you and then judge it.
Publishing a book is not easy. I don't think. I published one, and it's very hard.
No.
It's very hard to get somebody to agree to put it to print. So that's I think the tough part. You can write it, do it like you're saying, sit down and do it, but then getting somebody else to put it in print is also the other tough hurdle. So
yeah, that's a different thing, because you may know you like it, but you got to convince somebody else to like it and that they can sell it.
Yeah. So what's next? Do you have any upcoming projects? Any new books? What's next on the horizon for you?
Yeah, well, right now I'm working on a book of. I was Nebraska State Poet from 2019 to 2024, and during that time I traveled all around the state of Nebraska, did an event, at least one event in every county, and I'm putting together a collection of largely poems about that time, with a lot of poems about the roads, and also poems about poetry and politics and the pandemic and all that. So that's what I'm working on right now. And also just trying to, I left my full-time job 3 years ago to make my living as a writer and a speaker. And and I'm still just working to keep that going, doing appearances in schools and colleges and libraries and whoever will have me.
Yeah. One important thing I forgot to ask you about.
It's been a lot of fun.
I forgot to ask you about the U.S. State Department.
Yeah.
And your workshops with the U.S. State Department. What was that?
Oh, yeah. I got started. They were looking for a program in Minsk, in Belarus, and I had good credentials as a performing poet. I've done poetry slam, but also had a degree in creative writing. Put together a proposal to teach kids performance poetry, and it got accepted, and that got me started. So I've done a few since then, and it's been just a wonderful experience, and to go to these other countries and see other people kind of learn poetry the same way I did, in that they all wanted to write it, they all wanted to be expressive. Then I said, "Oh, did you like the poems you had to read?" No, there are these 200-year-old dead guys. It's like, all right, we're all the same in the world.
Wow. So did the U.S. State Department sponsor you to go to other countries to kind of have workshops with? Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, they brought me in usually it was a 2-week program in the countries, and the majority of them I worked with the same group of young adults for that time, and at the end there was a big event. Which was a lot of fun. It's just fun to see what people in other parts of the world want to write about. What's their biggest concern?
Yeah. And you said something I don't think I've ever heard. Poetry slam. What?
Yeah.
What is poetry slam?
Poetry slam is a form of competition poetry. And it's judged. Yeah, it's judged by the audience. So it's not like poetry experts reading your poems and stroking their chins. It's, 5 random people chosen in a bar holding up a number at the end of each poem, which, it's a terrible idea, but it's a wonderful idea, because it means, it turns the poetry event, it's a regular poetry reading, but it turns into more of an entertaining show, because the poets have to reach the audience. I can't just read a quiet poem about my navel lint unless it's really funny or really interesting.
Wow. I would assume that's really putting yourself out there. I mean, if you write something and then you're on a stage with 5 people you've never met before, hopefully, and they're just just judging you on your words. That's really putting yourself out there. Yeah.
It sort of is, but you also realize that these are 5 random yahoos. They might all be on too much medicine, so I'm going to read my poem as well as I can and hopefully bring it to life for the audience. And maybe the judge will like it, but hopefully the audience will.
Yeah. You might want to buy them a drink too.
Yeah.
Yeah. First round's on me. Well, it's very interesting talking to a poet. We don't get a lot. We get a lot of Disney history people, obviously, but talking to a poet, I was like, oh, this should be interesting. Well,
I mean, I think I am I do have the greatest book of poetry ever published about Disneyland.
Yes.
And it's the only book of poetry ever published about Disneyland. But it did win it won an award and was a finalist in another award. So it's got some credentials.
Yeah.
It's done pretty well.
No, I think it's done very well. Like really, really well for a theme park.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Listen,
an story. Yeah.
You don't see people writing poetry books about Universal or Six Flags, so that has to say something,
yet.
Right?
Not yet. I mean, someday somebody might. Maybe it's me.
Yeah, you can do it. I trust you.
Good. Well, good.
All right. So, where can everybody, find you? Because it seems like, if I'm a young writer, like you would be the guy to probably help me through roadblocks and mental blocks. And where can people find the book and purchase the book as well?
Yeah, well, I'd welcome people to reach out. They can find info on me or ask me questions at my website, which is midverse.com, midverse.com. You can also get my book through theoldmillpress.com or order it from your local bookstore. Anybody can get it. It's on Amazon too, but they're, Jeff Bezos' wedding and all. Yeah. We don't need to pay him for that.
No.
Go to your independent local bookstore if you can, unless you can't, and then get it wherever you can.
Yeah, I agree.
But yeah, anywhere books are sold.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Matt. I appreciate you coming on and talking about this and sharing your stories and sharing your memories with us. And hopefully we'll see something else come out of the mind of Matt.
There's plenty out there.
Right.
I've got other books, but I love writing. I love what poetry's done for me. So, and I also love what Disney's done for me. So this has been a good intersection. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you.
The Disney Parks podcast is not affiliated with the Walt Disney Company. All Disney parks, attractions, lands, shows, event names, etc. are registered trademarks of the Walt Disney Company.